My name is Lauren Williams. I'm Adult and Community Services Manager here at the Columbia Public Library, which is part of the Daniel Boone Regional Library System. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn, those of you in the room and also on Zoom. Today's program, we have Boone County Clerk Brianna Lennon, and today's Lunch and Learn, as always, is co-hosted by the library and the League of Women Voters of Columbia Boone County. Like I said, we've got folks in the room, also on Zoom, so a couple of housekeeping items. If you're on Zoom and you want to ask a question during the Q&A portion of the event, please use the chat feature. And we ask that you use the drop-down menu and select to share your chat with everyone so that others who are attending online can see what questions have been asked. We appreciate that. We'll do our Q&A, like I said, after the presentation. And for those in the room, I'll walk around with this microphone so that those in the room can hear you, but also then it picks up for the people on Zoom and they can hear what questions are being asked. We are recording this presentation, so it will be available in the next day or two on both the library's YouTube channel and also the League of Women Voters YouTube channel for future viewing, and you can share it with your family and friends. And now I'd like to welcome Barbara Hobby of the League of Women Voters of Columbia Boone County to introduce our speaker.
Barbara, they're saying they can't hear us, and we're like, oh, sorry.
Thank you, Lauren Williams and the Columbia Public Library for co-hosting this program. And we're delighted that Brianna Lennon is here to inform us about what we need to know and how the system works for voting. But before I do that, I wanted to make just a few announcements at the beginning of the program because we have a lot of programs up to the election that are very good for informing you, the voter, on the issues and the candidates. And also to celebrate, the first one is next Tuesday, September 17th at the Boone County Resource Center. We're celebrating Constitution Day. Pam Springfield has organized it as always, and it will be the Electoral College, its origins, history, problems, and possible solutions with Professors James Indersby and Jay Dowd of the Truman School of Government and the Public Affairs, with David Lyles moderating. So please join us next Tuesday. Our next Lunch and Learn is also election related. We're having Rudy Keller from the Missouri Independent talk about the ballot issues and give insight. So that should be really good. And that's here at the library, October 9th. And then let's see, we have 2 election forums, September 30th here at the library on, I think, more the Boone County candidates. And then October 3rd, we're doing the legislative races. So please join us for that. And with that, I'd like to introduce Brianna Lennon, who has been the clerk. Well, she was voted in 2018, clerk since 2019. And she's been working diligently to have secure, reliable, accessible elections. She graduated from the University of Missouri with a law degree and also a degree from Truman School of Public Affairs. Then she worked for the Consumer Protection Division in the Missouri Attorney General's office, and then Missouri's Secretary of State's office. In 2013, she was an elections counsel and deputy director of Missouri Elections Division. And she also, in her spare time, since she's been clerk, has been hosting an elections administration podcast with Eric Frey, is that I think? Frey. Starting, I think, in 2021. And that focuses on professional development for election administrators, offering valuable insights on how elections are run across the country. So not only is she working here in Boone County, but she's sharing her knowledge and educating people throughout the country. And just as a little side note, I first met Brianna when I was on the Greenbelt Land Trust before she ran for county clerk. And then Brianna became president, and she's been diligent and dedicated in everything she does, but she has a wide range of interests. So with that, I would like to give the floor to Brianna and we'll get more educated.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Thank you. Thanks, Barbara, for that really nice introduction. I really am very nerdy about elections, and so any opportunity to talk about elections, I'm thrilled to take. Hopefully, I've tried to cover a wide variety of things. So I want to make sure that we have time to talk about questions because I know that there are going to be quite a few. But this is probably the first election learn that I've had to do where there haven't been huge legislative changes that I have to say, okay, it used to be like this, but now it's going to be like this. We've been pretty steady since 2022. So a lot of this is going to be focused on the process that's in place right now. I like to give people a vocabulary and an understanding of how elections are run. So that way when their friends or their colleagues say, well, how do we really know that the results were accurate? Then you can say, actually, did you know that in Missouri that you're required to do this and this and this, and that's how we know. So we're going to cover some of that, and we're also going to cover just some important dates and deadlines. But of course, if you have any questions, I guess we'll do it after. I don't really mind if you interrupt me, but if it's better to wait to the end, that's really fine. So first, in talking about how elections work, we need to lay the foundation of making sure that we have an actual election to run. So we need voter registration because we need voters to have an election. We have to have candidates to put on the ballot. And then all that has to be certified to us, which happened yesterday for the November election. And once we have full certification of everything to the ballot, we can start creating it and ordering the ballot. So I know a lot of people in the room have been involved in different parts of the process, maybe have been a candidate before or have worked on issues to be certified to the ballot. So that is all precursors to what we need in election offices and county clerk offices and boards of elections to have everything ready to go. The voter registration, we always get questions about how we make sure that who we're registering are qualified and able to be there. So being registered is the basis for participating. If you're not registered to vote, you can't participate in the election. And the deadline is always 4 weeks before the election for new Missouri residents. We were successful in 2022 in getting that deadline waived for people that were already registered somewhere in Missouri. It used to be that you had to be registered exactly in the county that you lived in 4 weeks out. So if you if you purposefully moved from Cooper County to Boone and you didn't realize 2 weeks before the election that you had done that, you were out of luck. You'd have to vote a provisional ballot and it wouldn't count because you wouldn't have met the deadline. After the law changed in 2022, that can now be done. So if somebody wants to change their address after that 4-week deadline, totally fine, as long as they're registered somewhere in Missouri. The only thing that people have to remember is if they wait until doing it on election day, they have to come to our office to do it. And that's because our office is the only place where we have access to the statewide system to be able to see if you're registered in St. Louis, if you're registered in Kansas City. The polling places don't have that capability, so you have to come to our office to do it. But once you've submitted your registration or your change of address or whatever you've updated on your record to us, we're going to run that registration through DHSS, Health and Human Services, the Department of Corrections, the Social Security Administration data, and the DMV. And that's going to be checking to make sure that you are in fact alive. The Health and Human Services data is how we find out whether somebody has passed away or not, and we remove them from the roll. DOC is if you are a felon or not, if you're currently serving a felony. Once you're done serving that felony, that DOC match will go away, and we'll know that you are now eligible to vote, and we will put you into that status. So we get those reports as well. Social Security Administration, if you're providing us the last 4 of your social, then we can check that against, and a little pop-up will say, this is the, I forgot exactly what it says. It says, this individual exists or something like that to let you know that they are in fact a person that is matched to the Social Security Administration list. And then the DMV, if you give us your DMV, your driver's license number, we can check it against that as well. And we get a lot of our voter registration through the DMV anyway. So then we're not having to check the DMV data because it's coming to us from the. Most registration information is public under the law. That it's probably not a surprise to most people in the room, but a lot of people are surprised to learn that their information is public, including your voter history, not how you voted, just that you voted, your name, your address, and then the year of your birth. So it was that your entire birthday was public, and now it's just the year of your birth that's public. So that information is available. So when you get things from campaigns, some of the time they have gotten it from the Secretary of State's office, the clerk's office, because that's public. And it's stored in the statewide database called MCVR. That is managed by the Secretary of State's office, and all the voter registration information that we run all those checks against, DHSS and DOC and SSA, all of that is tied into the statewide database. So that's really our collective information. So that way, if you move from another county, we can also pull your record over. So you don't have all your history comes with it. It's a lot more complete. And if we have any questions, we can always reach out to the voter. That's how voter registration works. I'm going to jump just a little bit. Oh, Pam's question.
So they're trying to pass a law that you have to be a citizen federally. They're trying to pass a law that you have to be a citizen. It's the federal law that they're trying to pass. Is that information you already have that?
Citizenship data is not something that we can check against because there is no national compendium of citizenship data. There is no database that exists that says here's all the citizens in the United States.
Okay.
So when you go to register to vote and you check off whether you're a citizen or not, we rely on that information.
I see.
But the fact, and this is what I remind people too, the information is public. So it's not like if somebody had a question about whether someone was eligible or did vote or anything else, they could find them on the voter roll and see if they voted, because both of those things are public information.
Yeah.
And that is something that I have not seen. Nobody has brought to me, here's a list of people that we know shouldn't be on your roll. I've never had anybody do that.
Sure.
So it is right now current law in Missouri that you have to be a citizen to be able to vote. There is, I know some of the questions that I get pertain specifically to the DMV, because the DMV sometimes receives information about citizenship. But again, they're not really a good database of citizenship data either, because we just have not historically had that kind of check in any part of our government.
So you will, if they pass that, you will probably have to prove. So if they pass that, you will have to prove that you are a citizen.
Most likely, which you do in several states.
Oh, okay.
So several states do have that requirement for their role. What has happened in like Arizona, for example, is you basically have a bifurcated voter registration database. You've got one database of people that have proven that they're a citizen, which means they can vote on everything, state, federal, local. Arizona's law says you can still vote on federal things because US law says that you can vote.
Yeah.
But if you haven't proven that you're a citizen to Arizona, you can't vote on state and local stuff. So there's another database of people that can only vote on federal issues. And that's how they manage their election.
So what I read in the paper was that the House, Mike Johnson wants to add, that you would have to provide a birth certificate or a passport to register to vote. So what would be the barriers for you all if they passed such a law?
So I will say from an administration standpoint, right now, there is nothing that a voter has to bring to show. So I would imagine, and this is just hypothetically thinking out there, right now you have to show a photo ID or some sort of ID when you register to vote. That doesn't stop me from taking your mail or voter reg drive thing. We then send a letter that says, hey, you're registered, but at some point you got to show us your ID. But no rush, because the only thing that you need to do is get a voter ID card. I would anticipate it would probably bump up our cost a little bit because if they had to show something else and they didn't have it with them, we'd have to send them a letter that said, hey, you didn't provide your birth certificate yet. We're going to put you in pending status. When you show us your birth certificate, we can move on. So I would say from an administration standpoint, we do that all the time anyway, but the number of people that we'd have to do it for would kind of vary based on whether people have their birth certificates available.
On the form that you fill out, when you register, you check the box citizen. At the end, you have to sign under law that it's not perjury. And it's a criminal offense if you were to say you are a citizen and you're not. So I think that's a check so that we don't worry that there's lots of people who are illegal, you know, who would risk that kind of, there's a penalty of, I think, fine and maybe even jail time. I'm not sure. I think.
Yeah, well, and in practice, the other thing that happens if an individual does not have naturalization yet, and they end up on the voter roll, it risks their ability to remain here. So lots of times, any time really that I've heard of a situation like that happening, it is because whoever it is that accidentally registered now is getting advice from an attorney as they're working through their immigration paperwork, and they are panicking because they're like, I didn't mean to do this. I didn't know I wasn't allowed, whatever it was. And they haven't voted, but they are on the roll. So, yeah. No, I'm sorry. They share and keep me on track. So this election that's coming up, to last day to register to vote, I know this is like a wall of text. So there's a prettier picture on the next page. I'm just going to go over really fast. The last day to register to vote, if you're new to Missouri, is October 9th. We do have absentee voting starting on September 24th. That's for people that are going to be out of town or they work in healthcare as a first responder or as a poll worker, or if they have an illness or an injury or a disability. Those individuals, those voters can start voting September 24th, and they can vote all the way through till election day. If they want to do that in person, they can come to the government center and do that. If they want to do it by mail, they can get on our website and fill out an application or print out an application and send it to us, but they have to do that by October 23rd. So where a lot of people get confused is they hear absentee and they think that absentee only means mail, and it does not. In Missouri, absentee is a mail version of absentee or an in-person version of absentee. So that process starts September 24th. No excuse absentee voting, which I think colloquially most people refer to as early voting. That's the 2-week period of time leading up to election day where anybody that is a registered voter can cast a ballot in person, not by mail, but in person. And that starts October 22nd. So between October 22nd and November 4th, the government center is going to be open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, including Saturdays, just not Sundays. And then we also have weekend voting opportunities around Boone County to give people the ability to do no excuse absentee voting, early voting at times that are not just at the government center. And then once we get to election day on November 5th, you have your choice of whether to vote at your assigned polling location or at one of these 4 central polling locations. So you can pick one or the other. They are all available. And the government center is the same government center that you would come to if you voted during any other time. Memorial Union will be the one that we have on campus. Friendship Baptist Church is in North Columbia and Woodcrest Chapel is in South Columbia. So we try to spread them out for individuals that need that. And then here's the prettier version. We have this on our social media. It's also, I can also email it to the league and to the library if they want it. This is just the bare minimum dates and deadlines of things. Last day to register to vote, first day to early vote, last day to request an absentee ballot, and then our options for voting in person during early voting. So that's the November election. I'm gonna jump over this one because
That's right.
Because we've already passed it. So creating the election, this is what, when people were talking about, oh, if county clerks printed ballots yet, oh, is it going to slow everything down with everything that was happening in the courts over the past 2 weeks? Yes and no. So all of the information that we received on August 27th, which was the original certification date of the election, we could start putting into MCVR to create the election because we knew a lot of things were not going to change. So we could put in our local candidates, we could put in our state candidates, we could put in anything that we knew was not really something that might end up in litigation. And it's important that we are putting that into MCVR because it's taking the election information that we're putting into it and then tying it to each individual voter based on where they live. So that's why we always keep residential address. It's so important because if you live in County Commission District A and State Representative District 1, you need a different ballot from somebody that's in County Commission District B and State Representative District 1. All of that is tied together in MCVR. We also have to create the election a second time in our election software that is not connected to the internet and sits in a terminal in my office in a locked room all the time, where we put all of the information for the election in to create the actual PDFs of the ballot. So all the information I put into MCVR, I've got another person in the office that puts it all into the election software. We cross-check against each other, improve it, and make sure we have everything correct. And then that is how we have the PDFs and the ballots self-generated. That's how we can print things. If we need to print them, we can take those PDFs and print our own ballots. They're also the PDFs we send to our vendor so that they can start printing ballots for us. So we're now at the stage where we're deciding the number of ballots. In a November election, it's actually really easy. We just order 110% of the number of voters that we have. So you don't really have to mess with those numbers because the worst thing you could do is run out of ballots. And once we get that over to our vendor, then when they come back to us, we keep them inventoried, we keep them secured, and then we have chain of custody procedures and forms that follow those ballots all the way through the process. So that's all going to be happening in the next week or two. Then everything really gets started, the election starts. So once absentee voting starts, we need to have ballots. We need to make sure that we've got the applications on file and processed. We need to have a staffed office to assist with anybody that's going to come in person. And as people come in to vote, if they're coming in person, they're going to get checked in on the iPads, the same ones that you get checked in on when you go to vote in person. That's going to keep track of everybody that's voted. At a nightly basis, that information is pulled out of the poll pad and then put into MCVR so that everybody's voter record is kept up to date as well and marked as voted. Everybody that asks for a mailed ballot, that information is also put into MCVR. So everyone that votes absentee is either marked with an absentee received, which means that they came in and we gave them an absentee ballot and they cast it there, or an absentee sent, which means we mailed them an absentee ballot. When we get the absentee ballot back, they get marked as absentee received too. And anybody that's an absentee received status cannot vote again in the election. So that's how we track to make sure that everybody is not voting twice and that the poll pads all accurately reflect what the voter has chosen to do, if they're chosen to vote absentee or not. And if you've ever asked for a mailed absentee and then gone to the polls and then had to wait for a second because we have to clear that out, that's because when you asked for that ballot to be mailed to you, it put the absentee sent status on your voter record. And you can't move forward in the poll pad until that record is cleared. So that's what we do on election day, is clear a bunch of those codes out for people that have asked for it. And then we confirm that we have not received an absentee ballot. It's a very hands-on process. During the absentee period, that's also the time that we're doing voting equipment prep and testing. So every piece of equipment that we test, that we use for the election, is tested through called logic and accuracy testing. It's public. We have a bipartisan team of election judges come in. And in that testing, they create a test deck of ballots. So we will take the ballots that we get back from our vendor, randomly pull them from different parts of the process so that there are some from each of the polling places and each of the different ballot styles. And then we hand those blank ballots to our bipartisan team and say, hand mark them. However you want to hand mark them within there's some things that they have to do. They have to vote for one, they have to do certain things, but we'll intentionally make them make mistakes and stuff like that. So we're really putting the equipment through what a real life scenario would be. So once they have created their test deck, they run that through every single one of the machines to make sure that they're counting correctly. And as all of that is happening, we also are following through our chain of custody. So our bipartisan team is checking off on things, our warehouse manager is checking off on it, and it's inventorying everything, the ballots, the equipment, poll pads, everything that's going to be at a polling place is tested first and then sealed up and tagged with inventory tag numbers. Those tags are all tamper evident. They all have numbers on them. And inside, whether it's a bag or a box or something that we have secured, inside of it is a piece of paper that says the tag that we're putting on this is this number. So when the bipartisan team of election judges at the polls open up that box or bag, they have a piece of paper in there that says, oh, this is the one that was on here. Let's write it down and sign off on it. So they're all verified throughout the process before the judges open the polls. And then at the end of the night when they close, they check that off. Yes.
How do you select the bipartisan team of election judges?
So the bipartisan team of election judges is very similar to the same way we recruit our election judges in general. If we have election judges that have been doing it for a while and then say, you know, I can't work a full shift anymore, like I can't do 14 hours, but I'd like to be involved in the testing part of it, then we bring them in and they work on that. If we have people that specifically say, that's the part that I want to do, then we allow them to do that. So also, kind of perennially throughout this whole thing is voter education. We mail out and email sample ballots and polling place assignments for every election. So 4 weeks before the election, as everything else is happening, we're mailing out our sample ballots to people. We're putting them up on the website, and the sample ballot emails are part of our website. So when you get a sample ballot email and you click on the thing that says, I want to see my sample ballot, it's going to take you to our website. What it's actually going to take you to is the voter lookup tool. And the voter lookup tool is what you can get to. There.
Oh, whoops.
Oh no, I broke it.
Click it again.
Okay.
It's the middle, the very middle round button that.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do my sample ballot and where do I vote? So those are two, do my sample ballot. You can click on it anytime when sample ballots are available. So you don't have to wait for the email to come. We don't have it up now, obviously, because we don't have ballots yet. We just got everything finalized yesterday. But that is up there along with your polling place assignment for the entirety of the election. You can go to it every day and look at it if you wanted to look at your sample ballot. It also has we've got a map that has a list of our polling locations. And if you put in your address, click on that, where do I vote? It's going to show you a place where you can put in your address and it'll pop up with your polling places. So I always encourage people to use this website as much as possible. We get people that call us on the phone where they're on a different part of the website and they're like, well, but I really just needed this. And we're like, well, if you go to this other part of the website, it is also there. So everything that we mail out, everything that we tell people that they need to do or need deadlines for, or anything like that is always on our website. Our website is vote.boone.gov. I have it at the end. But this is where we're going to put our most up-to-date information and provide all those resources. So you can register to vote online on this website. You can request an absentee ballot online on this website. Pretty much anything you need to do, you can do on our website. Once you get to election day and using the equipment, I do like to tell people that they have a choice of the paper ballot. So we're a paper ballot state. We have always been a paper ballot county. but the paper ballot that you have, you can either mark with a pen or you can mark using the touchscreen device. Either way, the result is a paper ballot. So you may ask for the touchscreen one because you need audio assistance or fine motor skill assistance, or whatever reason you need to use it. It is there as an accessibility device. It meets all of the accessibility criteria. So it's really great for voters that have like visual impairments or things like that. But it's also helpful because it's just a little more tactile. So if you have trouble like holding a pen and marking a ballot, the touchscreen device is your friend in those cases. So those are available when you go to vote. And then after you've marked your ballot, it's going to go into the tabulator. And this is the tabulator. This is what is tested through logic and accuracy testing. All the ballots get run through it, and then we run a report to see what the results that it counted were against the results that were hand counted. So the voters slide their ballot up into the top here. Sometimes it's confusing because there's two, because the paper ballot for the accessible device is narrower. And so that's why that little black thing is there, because it's got a little narrow edge to it, so you can run that one through. But otherwise, all the ballots go underneath it. Sometimes people try to stick them in here, and that doesn't do anything. So it's a lot like the Scantron, which I recently learned kids don't even take anymore. So now I feel really old. So that's how the equipment works. So from our perspective, that's everything that we're doing, or most everything that we're doing to get ready for the election. From the voters' perspective, things I wanted to hit on real quick: photo ID, absentee voting, election results, and election judges. So photo ID is required in Missouri. Valid IDs that can't be expired, Missouri driver's license or a non-driver's license or a passport or a military ID. But if it is expired, it's okay as long as it expired after the date of the last general election. The nice thing about this being the general election means that the last one was November of 2022. So if your license expired at the end of 2022 or anytime in 2023, or this first half of 2024, you're fine. That's the time that it's confusing is like in the April election in 25, then it's only good if it had expired November 6, 2024 through April. So the closer you get to a general election, the bigger the space is that you can have an expired license or passport. The ones that come up most often that are not considered valid anymore are those voter ID cards that we send you. They're good for a lot of other things and they're helpful for our administration, but they are not good for voting. Same with ballot mailings, student IDs, University of Missouri employee IDs, out-of-state driver's licenses, and stay-at-home cards. Those would not be considered valid photo IDs. But the good news is that there is an option if you do not have the right ID, that is a provisional ballot. And when you get a provisional ballot, what we tell people is account for a little extra time when you go to the polls, because you're going to have to fill out your ballot, but also the blue provisional ballot envelope that goes along with it. The judges will help you through that process. They will fill out their portion of the envelope, you'll fill out your portion of the envelope, and then you'll put the ballot in it. And all those provisional ballots, this is not the only kind of provisional ballot, this is just the one related to photo ID. When they come back to our office, we count the number of ones that we have just for preparation. So we always know, oh, we had 50 this time, or we had 7, or whatever we had. And during the last part of the elections process, which is certification, we go through and we count these. So these are counted as long as the signature on the envelope matches the signature on the voter registration record. And for the voter registration record, we scan in everything that has a voter signature on it. So even if you registered to vote one time and you never did anything else, if you signed anything and we got a copy of it, it's signed into your record, it's scanned into your record. So 99% of the time these ballots count. The only time I have seen them not count is if the voter doesn't fill out all the information. So like it comes back to us and the voter hasn't filled out their birth date or something that is missing, or they just don't sign it at all. We do occasionally get ones where they don't sign it, and then we have no signature to match it against, so we can't count it. So those are available for anyone that does not have a photo ID. You can also contact the Secretary of State's office to talk to them about obtaining a non-driver's license if that is something that you would prefer as well. Does anyone have any questions about that part? Don't have. Absentee voting, like I said, any voter can cast an absentee ballot without stating a reason during the 2 weeks before election day, and we have weekend locations. I really like data, so this is my fun data. As No Excuse has gotten more popular, now it didn't pass until the middle of August in 2022. So I keep April of 22 up there as kind of a baseline of absentee turnout of the total turnout was only about 5%. And that's what it was historically for pretty much every election. We were consistently at 5%. In November of 22, we bumped up to 14%. Now that was also, I think, partly because that was the first time it was available to people. And so some people were just kind of finding out about it. April elections was where we started seeing a little bit of like, great, this is catching on, because even when we had smaller amounts of voter turnout, the proportion was still pretty healthy. We were double what we'd been in 22. And August was awesome. We hit 13%. So for me, the reason why I care about this is that the more that people vote no excuse absentee or just absentee in general, the better experience that they're going to have, because if they have an issue, we can correct it before election day. They still have time to take care of it. And it makes election day itself run a little bit smoother. So in this, I don't know, it's not volatile, but like the hardest part I think right now about elections administration is getting election judges to serve and work at polling places. And the consequence of that sometimes is that there are either fewer polling places that we can open than we would like, or there are just not as well staffed polling places that are open, and that does not lead to good customer service. So voters have a more negative experience. If we can get people to kind of front load the process, our office staff can help, election judges that are working in our office can help, and it just makes it a smoother process overall. So I like the trend that we're going on, and hopefully it continues. We're trying to make it available and so that everyone knows that it is an option. Okay, so then we'll pretend the election happens, everything is done, all the ballots are back in our office. How do we know that everything was correct? We obviously get all of the results on election night and we post those, and they're called unofficial election results for a reason. And that's because we have to check all of the paperwork to make sure that the election judges accounted for all the voting equipment and supplies and everything. When they come back to our office on election night, they actually drive together in the same car. We make the Republican and Democrat supervisors get in the same car with the ballots. One can't follow the other. They have to be together, and they bring everything back to our office. And then we inventory all the stuff that they brought back. And then we take all of those tabulators have USB sticks in them. We put those into our computer that is not connected to the internet. It tabulates all of the votes, and that's our unofficial result. Then somewhere between 4 days and a week or so later, that's when we can start our certification process. And that's when we have another bipartisan election judge team, who again are people that either just have a really big interest in it, or the central committees tell us who would be interested in it, or they just have been doing it a long time and want to continue doing it. We often in November elections need more than one bipartisan election judge team, so then more people get experience with it. But they're going to come in, they're going to check all those provisional ballots, they're going to check those signatures. Any military and overseas ballots that we've gotten by 12 p.m. on the Friday after the election, because they have a slightly different deadline for getting their ballot back to us, they have to count those. and then they have to adjudicate any write-in votes. So once they have finished looking through all the ballots, and we have a set amount of ballots that has been cast and counted and checked. The big time-consuming part that is the reason why we know that the machines worked correctly is that we have the bipartisan teams do a hand count of all of the ballots cast from a randomly selected 5% of the precinct. And when I say they do a hand count of all the ballots cast, they don't just run through them once, because each of these ballots has, like for the November election, like 19 different races on it, and then all of the constitutional issues. They have to, there's a certain, there's a code of state regulations that has, you have to randomly pick one of the statewide, you have to randomly pick one of the state rep cases, you have to randomly pick one of the counties. Like they have to count those ballots 5 or 6 times. And then not only 5 or 6 times for the races, but for every voter or for every candidate on there. So that process takes anywhere from a day and a half to sometimes it takes 3 or 4 days, depending on how many teams we have and how many ballots get randomly selected. Sometimes they select really big polling locations, and then you have to count all those. So that process, once it's completely done, then we say that the election results have been certified. That's the official result. And that's what we send to the Secretary of State's office, who then does their own certification process and signs off on everything. So election results, the election is really not over until about a month after, when we finally concluded doing all of these things. And I always like to kind of remind people that this is a people-driven process. Democracy is a human process. Election judges is the backbone of the election. Having polling places that are well-run requires good people assisting voters as they exercise their constitutional rights, and it helps maintain the integrity of the election process. So people are kind of the biggest thing that we need. They're also the biggest cost, interestingly, in a state like Missouri, where most voters are casting their ballot at polling places, and we need enough election judges. When you look at the cost of elections, it's the payroll of the election judges that actually is the biggest cost to how expensive our elections are. So it really doesn't happen without people. And that's not always obvious. I think people think of elections as like this thing that just happens and it's this black box, and it's not, it's community. It's all community. So the takeaways I want to give you all before we have 15 minutes for questions. Watch the deadlines. Update your address every time you move, even if it's just on the street. And please use our website. You can use it to register to vote or request an absentee ballot. Look up your sample ballot, find your polling place. All of that is available, and we try to make it easy to access. And there's all our contact information. I will take questions about anything, or even things that I didn't talk about.
I just want to say really quickly, if people are, is this on? Can you hear me? If you are hesitant to vote early because you worry you won't get a sticker, you get a sticker if you vote early. They have them there.
So you explained about our website. I was wondering about the other counties throughout Missouri. Do they have similar information on their website, or does that vary by county?
It varies by county. One of the great and also not so great parts of elections is the decentralization, because some counties just have way fewer resources than others. And we're very fortunate that we have an in-house IT staff and an interest in having a very useful website. But there are many that don't, especially in some of the more rural areas. So we do hear actually from people that move from other counties sometimes that don't think to look for a website because they came from a county that didn't have one.
I have a question.
Yeah, early on when I moved here and I was talking about, oh, the things we get from our county clerk right before the election, to somebody from another part of the state. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, don't you get all that information, we get all that information, so we're really fortunate here. I was gonna ask you about, I don't know what, I call it curbside service or car side.
Oh, yeah,
If you
curbside.
might want to mention that for folks.
Yes, so curbside voting is an option. It's called curbside because you literally don't have to get out of your car. And, it is something that exists as an accessibility tool for people that go to their polling place, but, don't necessarily have the ability to get into the polling place. Where we see it happen most often, I feel like has been, especially with COVID, a lot of COVID positive people. We have them come to our office. So they come to the Boone County Government Center and they call our office and then we come down with the ballot. So curbside is really just a variation of, you're still voting in person. You still need to have your photo ID. Everything is the same. You just don't have to go inside to get checked in. Election judges will come out to you.
Hi, 2 questions. College students, if they are from another city, another part in the state, I don't know the rule of college students. Can they vote? Or do they have to do absentee voting? What is the rule in Missouri for college students?
Yeah, so in Missouri, residency is not something that you have to have for a certain amount of time. So if a college student moves here from St. Louis and they're living in a dorm, they reside in that dorm. So they can register to vote at that dorm. And often, actually, if you look on Mizzou's website, they encourage out-of-state students to register to vote when they first get here so that they can get in-state tuition. So it's very common for college students to register to vote here, even if they're from another place. But they have the option too, if they don't believe, it is up to their intention. If they intend to be residents of Boone County by living here, then they can register to vote. If they intend to stay a St. Louis County resident, then they can stay registered in St. Louis County, but then they will need to vote absentee because they'll need a St. Louis County ballot, and I can't do that.
The other question, I'm not sure of the right terminology, but there was a nationwide program for voting that the governor or the legislature pulled us out of.
Eric?
Yes, Eric.
Yeah.
It sounded like it was a good program. What happened? Or can you speak to that?
I can speak a little bit to what it was. So Eric is basically a data aggregator and matcher to see like all that public information that we have. They could put it against all the public information from any other state that was a member of Eric and say, oh, look, these people are registered in both of these states, but this one's more recent. You should reach out to them and see if they have actually moved so that we could keep our rolls cleaner. And it also found like, if you're a Boone County voter, but you passed away 2 states away, I'm not going to get that information from that state's Department of Health and Human Services. So Eric was a great way to be able to say, oh, that person, their Health and Human Services information does say they've deceased. And so we could act on that information. Now it takes a longer time to get it because we can't get it directly from Eric. All that I can really say about why we're not in it anymore, it was political reasons and not anything to do with the actual functionality of the program.
Was it
Still a good program. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was great. Actually, when I was in the Secretary of State's office, I wanted us to join so bad. But when it first started, all the states have to buy into it. So it's a nonprofit. It's governed by the states that are on it. So every Secretary of State has a member on the board to govern, like when they make a decision about, do we upgrade our servers and like literally just administrative stuff and things. And the buy-in cost was still pretty expensive because it started in like 2012 or 2013. So in 2014, 2015, it was still kind of expensive. In 2018, the price dropped. And so our Secretary of State joined Eric because it was then like it made sense and had been paying into that. And yep, through political reasons, we're no longer a part of Eric, but it was very helpful. I'd like to see if it's joined again.
Let's let Chad have a turn.
Oh, Chad has some? Okay. All right, this question is about ranked choice voting. What would it imply for county clerks in managing the voting process cost-wise and time-wise? Okay, so The biggest thing about ranked choice voting, and one of the reasons you'll see a lot of county clerks talk about how it's not doable, two reasons really. One is that none of our equipment right now can be programmed for ranked choice voting. So we'd have to have an initial outlay to update the equipment to be able to do that. The biggest thing that ends up coming up is that in order to do ranked choice voting successfully, when you see it in states like Maine, Maine's Secretary of State's office literally gets all of the ballots from the entire state. Because to do ranked choice voting, you have to have access to all the ballots cast in the state. So you would either have to have every county clerk in the state send their ballots to the Secretary of State to be tabulated, or you'd have to have every county clerk in the state buy the exact same equipment so that all the equipment together could aggregate all of the information and tabulate it in the Secretary of State's office. Or what some have done, which I do not think at this point is something that has really been like certified or allowed anywhere, is use some sort of open source technology to aggregate the digital versions of ballots, which is not really my favorite thing. That's something I would like to do. But that is why. Now, ranked choice voting on a smaller scale, there are cities that have ranked choice voting and things like that. That can be done because the city is within the county. So if I had to tabulate ranked choice voting for the city of Columbia, we could do that. That would be fine. Where we run into issues is when you're talking about multiple election jurisdictions trying to account for all of the ballots. So that's why it would cost money and a whole new process. And then somebody else asked, have we had any calls from people that have questioned the fairness and accuracy of elections? Thankfully, not really. I mean, we have some people that call and ask about certain things, but they're very receptive. We haven't had really people that have not wanted to engage with us. And then do we put that information on social media sites? Yes, we do. So we have a Facebook, a Twitter /X, I guess, Instagram, and we also have a TikTok. So we put all of that there too. The TikTok is a little more for views than it is for, it's trying to generate interest to send people to the website.
Can election judges share their scripts now?
Yes.
Can you tell us how to do that?
Yes. So election judges, unless you're going to be a supervisor, because if you're going to be a supervisor, you do need to be there all day. You can sign up with a partner. We do ask that you choose who your own partner is and that you be of the same political party. So that way, there's a little bit of accountability. Because if you take the morning shift, your friend better show up for the afternoon shift, otherwise you're stuck there all day, and vice versa. So if you want to do that, you can email this email address and let us know who your partner is and what party you're both, and then we can get you assigned to a poll. And we have 4 or 5 groups that do that every year. It's been really
Are you
helpful.
advertising that?
So it's sort of advertised, yes. On our poll worker information, like our flyers and stuff, we do say that there are, it's hard to advertise, yes, we have it, but you have to bring your own person and you have to be of the same political party. So most of it is advertised. Split shifts are available, to contact us. And then we talk to them and explain it.
And so do you still need poll workers?
Yes.
Or is it too late for that?
It is not too late for that. It is still the perfect time for that. We are going to start our training the second week of October. So if you are interested, the hardest part is making sure that we have a partisan balance. So there are always going to be people that sign up and then they don't get called, or they're not needed, but we always need backups and things like that too. So if you've ever been interested, now is a great time to sign up.
I am pretty sure how different my signature is from day or minute to minute. How do you evaluate the accuracy of signatures for identifying people?
So there are a few things that we look for as kind of, very informal training and things like that, but there are things like loopiness and slants and things like that. They're very, I would say, if I had to have one word for how we did it, it would be voter friendly, because it is very much a situation where we will look at the entirety of a form that was filled out. So if you like hand wrote in part of it and then you signed, and then your signature on a provisional ballot, for example, has a combination of those features, and you're like, oh, the way that they sign their J looks a lot like this J that they wrote on this thing. I've literally heard conversations from my bipartisan teams being like, I think that that's close enough. I think that matches. And especially when you've got other corroborating things like, you know, the address is still the same and everything else, like it weighs in favor of the voter. So it's not like some states that do really hardline signature matching, because it's their usual method for counting ballots. They will run it through software. They'll run it through a scanner with software on it, and then that'll just automate the signature stuff. We don't do that. Everything is done by hand with 2 people verifying it, which I think is one of the reasons why we have such a high acceptance rate on our blue provisional ballots.
How do you accommodate people in nursing homes, retirement homes, and assisted living facilities?
So we have a really good relationship. We have somebody in our office that works directly with the social workers at every place that allows us to have one. So Tiger Place and like all of the ones that you would, I think of, and Lenore and all of that. We reach out and make sure that anyone that wants an application can get one. We also educate a lot of our nursing homes about the permanent advocacy test. And that's a little lesser known because it's not really relevant to everybody. But if you have an illness or disability that's never going to change, you're just permanently incapacitated, you never leave the nursing home and you don't feel like you can get out, you can sign up for this permanent absentee list. We will mail an absentee application for every election that you're eligible for. And then as long as you sign that and send it back to us, we'll mail you an absentee ballot. So a lot of our nursing home folks are voting that way. But we also do deliver ballots to our nursing homes, to people that, if we have more than 10 people that are requesting a ballot from the same place, we will go and actually bring the ballots to them. They will mark them and we'll take it back to the office.
So thank you so much, Brianna. Wow, so much information. I think we're a pretty formed audience, but I'm sure everyone learned a lot here. So thank you so much, and for your work too. And I also heard that you will be a panelist at the Brennan Center. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so, I didn't write down the date. I know you have the date somewhere, but the Brennan Center is doing a perspectives from election experts panel. When is it?
In the field.
In the field, yes. And it'll be me, it'll be the Secretary of State of Arizona, and a couple other people. And it's all virtual, so you can sign up on the Brennan Center's website. I know it was in the last voter guide as well, voter newsletter. So that should be fun.
Thank you so much, and I just want to remind everyone to look at our League of Women Voters website for all the events, election-related events that are coming up, starting next Tuesday, Constitutional Day. Thank you to the live audience and to the Zoom audience. Thank you so much.